Hi, Dr. Heba.
How are you, my dear?
Hi, I'm good. How
Thank
are
you
you?
for another great group and meetings. I like it very much. Actually, it refresh all the information, and it's really nice. Thank you, Akansha.
Oh, thank you very much for joining. I mean, as I always do, I learn with everyone. I mean,
Yeah, it's
for
great.
me, for me, reading everything again and again, it kind of
Yeah,
gets into my mind better.
yeah, it's really good, a very good idea, and
ये
it's
blue
refreshing.
lines में देख कितने अलग options हैं.
Yeah.
Let me mute.
I started the earlier one. It is nice. Uh, Maybe later we go through it again. Now will be if you want to ask about cocktails and how we do cocktails on or what we do now on what we do not do actually about cocktails.
Mm-hmm.
About cocktails we don't do except for the primary colors that have stability, but the new color that have degradation, high degradation, and we do not use it in the cocktails. And we do cocktails like
Can you explain? Can you explain to our participants what the cocktails is?
the new colors like the PR Psi 5, and this is a highly degraded highly degraded dyes. The degradation is very quickly, so we don't use it in cocktails. We like to depend on the basic monoclonals, basic dyes like FITC, PE, and that's it. We do what we call backbone markers in all panels. That's the basic monoclonals that found on every cell, like CD45, like
Right.
CD34. If
Right.
we are doing the B cell panel, CD10, CD19, we use the fixed markers that we use in every tubes with the basic colors that have stability. The monoclonals itself had the stability, and this
Mm-hmm.
cocktails it lasts accordingly from 1 week to 1 month, and we use it to put on the backbone marker that is present in every tubes. But the new markers found are now markers reaching from 12 to 18 and even more. The new
Mm-hmm.
markers they are highly degraded, have degradation degraded very fast, and the lighting is very hard for this marker. So we put this markers on the while we are working daily. But the other stable markers we can do cocktails. So cocktails is we use it. Yes, we use it, but we use it with a specific way so that we can we that at not and the end that the dye itself is not degraded, or at the end like you are wasting the dyes, and there is a bias, a huge bias.
Mm-hmm.
This is an issue. Another issue, definitely, when we do cocktails or we do panels, we have to be sure the amount of stain we are putting, because as you mentioned, Akanshia, there is spilling over from one channel to another channel.
Mm-hmm.
So how we put the stepwise, how we put the dyes, and the amount of the dye itself is very important. So will not be spill over from one channel and to another channel, which will again give a false positive results.
Right.
Uh, as you can see with cases like Euroflow, they have
Mm-hmm.
been through like years in putting panels all together with specific amounts, so that this amount it will be specifically to the amount of blood or bone marrow that you are putting, and it will help that this amount is not spilling over. And as you said also, we use all the darker, brighter dyes for the mostly expressed on the surface. And this is the most CD45, it's the most expressed marker. So we use the dimmer monoclonal on the reverse. Cases like the aberrant marker, we use also the very bright monoclonals, very
Mm-hmm.
bright dyes for this. Why? Because while we are searching for minimal events. So in cases of aberrant marker, we choose for this aberrant marker the brighter monoclonal, so that when we do MRD, the very minimal number of events can be bright and seen.
Right, right.
So,
Makes
this
sense.
is a comment of what I heard from the recording yesterday. And whenever there's something, I will definitely participate. Thank you. Can we start?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for all that overview. And I will be interested because you are kind of doing this for a long, long time. I would be interested in knowing your perspectives and things as well.
Definitely.
So today, let me show you what is in our agenda today. Today, I don't know, I mean, either I can start the lecture again, or I can, so what I have been doing yesterday, I was doing that, I was starting the lecture and I was pausing the lecture and discussing about it. I think, or else I can just go over it again for my own personal reasons. A personal reason being, if I read it again, I will be actively involved in reading and understanding things rather than passively listening to my own lecture. I might not pay attention. So right now it's kind of weekend. I can still study again. So let's try to understand. These are the so first is a general analysis procedure that we'll be discussing, and that we'll be discussing on a little bit about gating, little bit about compensation and stuff like that. Then we'll be discussing the myeloid analysis and the gating, and then we'll go into B cell. So we did not cover B cell in our sessions last time, so we'll be doing B cells now, and T cell. We'll be doing T cell as well, the gating and everything. We'll try to combine it with the Brentwood article on acute leukemia and stuff like that, and maybe so let's see. So let's start with the general analysis procedure, and I'm glad someone mentioned that in the group, and it's good to go through that first. So this is SOP that we had at Sloan Kettering, and this is very good for understanding purposes. That's why I'm going through these first, and that will clear your mind towards what and how things are done. So I will not go into the quality control. You can read on your leisure. I'll go into the plots more than the other things. So first thing first, there is a gating of time. So time gating, and this time gating is useful for analyzing time delay, or having, if there is a air clot, a clot acquiring air or clot that is there. Let me, I'll make Rajeshri, are you here? Sorry, Rajeshwari. I always call you Rajeshwari. Rajeshwari, are you here?
Yeah.
Are you available? I was thinking about making a couple of people co-host so they can admit people while I'm talking. So maybe Anju, you're here as well, right?
Yes, Dr. Akansha, I'm here.
Yeah. So I will also make you co-host, and so that you guys can start.
Okay,
You guys,
I'll do that.
yeah, you guys can start admitting people, because I won't be able to do that once I'm talking. All right, so we were talking about the time gating, and so basically, let's see the time gate, how it looks like. So the time versus CD45 is used to is the first thing that we used to perform, and when you see that there are like empty spaces over here. So basically, not all the events are shown are present over here. So basically, the events, they are over here, and all the events are not like this is an empty space. So we used to decrease this time gate to the all the way to the when all the events are visible. And then the other thing in the time gate is when you start seeing a lot of CD45 negative cells, these CD45 negative cells, that means there is more of kind of air or clot that has been acquired in the tube, and you need to decrease the time again, like this gate, to exclude these CD45 negative cells. So that I mean, this is not generalized things. I mean, things are different in different labs, and they do different things. But this was what was in the wood list. So then the general gating, it starts with excluding the singlets and doublets. So singlets are the one that have a high forward scatter over here, and they increase in proportional to the forward scatter, as well as FSH and FSCH and FSCA. And the doublets, so we have to remove the doublets out. So if we single out the singlets, we need the singlets for our analysis procedure. And anyone can like interrupt me and tell their opinions and stuff
Oh,
like
okay. Now I will tell you two things. The time gate, we don't use it in general practice because most of the time, this time gate, when you are entering a very big number of events, normally with acute leukemias, acute lymphoma panels, you are entering between 10,000 to 20,000 events. So we don't use time gate because most probably you are in front of your machine, and this is not the case. But time gate are only used in cases if you leave the machine, and in cases of MRD because you are entering from 2 million to 10 million events. So sometimes you can leave the machine. For this, sometimes there will be air that it should be excluded before doing the analysis. But on general practice, we do not have the time gate event, except for timing when we are entering a very huge number of events, millions numbers of events to exclude. Otherwise, you don't need this type of gating. The singlets, if you can understand the principle of the singlet versus the doublet, as you said yesterday, we are entering into a cheese. The cell go into a cheese, a very tight cheese. Supposedly, these cells go one by one. Sometimes this cell, like they squeeze themselves in between each other, so that as if there's two cells going. This will give a different size, and this is what we call doublet. This cell that put itself in between the cells, so it give it a different size, a different granulation. So this is the create what we see as a doublet. The doublet, the singlet, you put it all together like an arrow. Like these are the singlet. These are the cell that committed itself to be walking marching one by one in the sheath. But the doublet, these are the cells that merge itself between other cells and make the cheese like expanded. And because of this, we exclude this doublet because it gives bias in the nature of the cell, the size, and the granularity.
Got you. Okay, yeah, that is
Just wanted to add one thing here. So FSCH means it is the height. FSCA is the area.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and if the cells are, I mean, the height won't, for doublets and singlets, the height will not be influenced that much. It may be increased a little bit, but it won't be increased that much, but the area will be influenced heavily.
Because, yes, because it squeezes itself between the cells to give it a larger size.
Right. So that's why we always gate the doublets on the area side. That would be a separate population. Below the diagonal cells that you see in the FSC versus the green diagonal population here, the doublets are on the area side. They will have higher area than your singlets. So that's what I wanted to say. Like we exclude the cells that are on the area side.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you, both of you. I want this to be, as I said, I want this to be more of discussion based rather than just one person talking, and that way I am going to learn as well. So I would encourage you to continue doing that, interrupt and continue doing that. Okay, so this is the first thing that we do. We like we gate on the singlets, and this is the one that we work on. After, so this is our singlets population that we have gated, and we see it on the side scatter and forward scatter now. So after taking it from the side scatter and forward scatter, we have to exclude the debris that comes in the lower side scatter and lower forward scatter area. So those are the unlicensed RBCs that are present in this area, and those have to be removed. So basically we are going to adjust this gate. So this gate, everything is adjustable, and we are going to adjust this gate so that this area is removed. Anything to add in this one? Okay. And then the third thing that, so we have now the basically viable cells. So these are the non-viable cells, right? So the next gate that we did was this gate, that was the viable cells. Now we don't need the granulocytes in these viable cells. So we'll try to exclude the granulocytes and eosinophils that will have the highest side scatter, right? So as we have been talking that the granulocytes, they have granules, and side scatter is complexity of the cell. So basically the highest side scatter granulocytes we are going to exclude. So now we have white blood cells without the granulocytes, kind of a nicer area. So now so then we go to CD45 and side scatter. So as I was mentioning that many of the labs, the CD45 and side scatter, they are reversed. The CD45 is here and side scatter is here. In Woodlist, the CD45 is in the y-axis and side scatter is on the x-axis. Kind of messes up how you see things, but the concept remains the same. Again, after we see the white blood cells, all the white blood cells are determined by CD45 positivity. That's what they are saying. Again, there will be some debris that will be CD45 negative, and they should be excluded. So that's what we do after we get those white blood cells. However, one thing to remember is the plasma cells. So if you remember the abnormal, we haven't spoken about that as yet. So I'll tell you, the abnormal plasma cells, they lose CD45. So one thing caveat that we have to remember is the plasma cells that has lost CD45, they have to be regated. If we exclude these plasma cells from our gating procedure, that would mean that they are not shown in our plots, and we completely miss out on those plasma cell population. That's why it is important to review the gating while we are doing our cases, to make sure that there are not things that unfortunately have been lost, and that's why not seen in the subsequent plots. So then after this, we are going to gate our areas. And so basically CD45 and side scatter, I have shown this before as well. So side scatter, highest side scatter is the granulocytes, and the highest CD45 is more of the lymphocytes. In between are the monocytes, and the dim side scatter and dim CD45 is more of the blast gate, and this is where the hematogones lie as well. Important thing to remember is this dim CD45 gate, not only the blast cells, but also basophils lie here, immature monocytes, plasmacytoid dendritic cells, and hematogones. So these are the cells that are hiding in this area, and you have to make sure that you identify them correctly. So to emphasize, blast, basophil, immature monocytes, plasmacytoid dendritic cells, and hematogones. So they're saying the myelomonocytic gate includes granulocytes, myeloid blasts can be there as well, and monocytes like over here. So basically, if you see over here, this is the myelomonocytic gate, really, in real sense. So this will have this pink population, this green population, and this red population. So basically, the granulocytes, monocytes, and the blasts. So again, over here, the lymphocytes are gated separately out, and this blast gate, as we were talking, has mainly the blast, but also the other things hiding in them. So a little bit about compensation. The compensation.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
can the blasts also have high side scatter?
Uh, the blast can, so if you remember the blast morphology, most of the blast, if you remember, they do not have granules. So they have very fine granules or they do not have granules. So that's why we have low side scatter in the blasts. The blast equivalents like a promyelocyte will have high side scatter because it has prominent granules. So but we have to calculate them as blasts as well. So these are scenarios when the blast will have high side scatter, or maybe like the promyelocytes, which are also blast equivalents. Does that make sense?
Uh,
Yes.
I, I I
Yes.
want to tell you an advice for all cases. We have to know all the gates. We have to be sure about all the population. There's all the population what they are exactly. We do not depend on gating on the dim population, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to do to make sure all the gates what they really express. This is number one. You have to make sure you have to correlate between the morphology that you are seeing and your scatter, and this is an important issue as well. Number three, as you have said, cases mostly are in the DIM45, but many of the myeloid blasts are higher side scatter than the dimmer B lymphoblasts. And definitely the highest would be the promyelocyte. They are not at all in the low side scatter. They are in the very high side scatter, like a triangle upward. Also,
Mm-hmm.
the cases of the monoblast or promonocyte, which we cannot differentiate, it take itself from the area of high side scatter to the monocyte area. The monoblasts are not present in the DIM45 at all. It is present in the high side scatter and going to the monocyte area. For this correlation between the morphology and the flow cytometry is very important. For this, it is important to know the maturation and the monoclonal sequence of maturation of every population. For this, it is very important that you gate on all gates that you are seeing in your scatter, not only targeted one. Okay?
Right, right. That makes sense. All right. So compensation. Um, so so compensation. They are saying observe all the plots for proper compensation. If compensation is not correct, adjust the compensation. If the compensation of the same fluorochrome needs to be adjusted multiple times, notify the other higher attendings. So now they are showing the examples of improper and proper compensation. In Woodlist, what we used to have is when we see these kind of triangular populations, like this triangular, or this triangular, the triangular populations will be the populations that are not compensated well. So then you have to change your compensation, and then this is the properly compensated population that will look more round, will not look like triangles anymore. So that's a little bit about compensation. I am not an expert on compensation, but this is what I know about compensation, that you have to keep on changing the compensation till you kind of get the perfect compensation.
Actually, by now we do not do that anymore. The quality control and the machine setting has to be fixed, and you
Yes,
should not
I was
play
coming
with the
to
compensation at all.
that.
Now the type of quality control QCs are. It's not that easy that you do compensation yourself with every case. This is part of the setting, and if you feel there's over or under compensation, you have to go to the engineer and the setting of the machine once again, because it's a huge setting according to the QC and the beads that are found now. It's not like earlier with the 8
So I want
colors
to
and
interrupt
12
you here.
colors.
I want to
The
interrupt
beads
you
have to
here,
do that.
Dr. Deepa.
Compensation beads. We use compensation beads in the start.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you here. The thing is, in MSK, we used to change our compensation all the time. The reason being, we can like not like, I would not include myself in that maybe, but what there were very intelligent guys over there who knew exactly what is wrong with the compensation, and these are the compensation libraries. So basically, when you are applying compensation, you are applying the compensation libraries to that particular panel. And uh, after compensation libraries, there are multiple cases that might have some abnormalities in the compensation, and they were all the time, they were like everyone who was more knowledgeable on compensation. I just kept on playing with the compensation all the time, but those who were more knowledgeable in that, they used to all the time change the compensation and adjust it to their
Maybe earlier with fewer colors, 3 or 4 colors, but with the very high quality machines now and the compensation beads, I think it is not advised, but I don't know exactly, but this is
So
how routine. It is very strict. We have to go through the compensation beads, and because it is a huge setting for the whole panels, and so you shouldn't play with it. But
so the
earlier
thing is,
with
like
four
here,
colors,
when
maybe
you
it was
start every day in the morning, we all do the beads and we set up the
yeah,
compensation for our regular panels.
yes,
And
exactly.
also we fix the fluorochromes. But sometimes, especially from where Akansha is talking about, they have add-on panels all the time, and they don't usually use the standard panels. Like you have your fixed leukemia panel, fixed lymphoma panel, but their requirement keeps changing. So they sometimes throw in a panel that is not the traditional one. So they kind of change the compensation. They play with it while they are analyzing the case also. Like Akanksha said, when something is so diagonal in all the plots, they exclude it as debris, or they change the compensation to see if it is really debris or not. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Go
so when
on.
it is like the traditional panel that you run for all the cases, you don't have to do that. But if not, then they change that sometimes.
right. And like our at Sloan Kettering, we used to have 10 color flows. And I mean, I should not say our, but they have they have top notch things over there. Like that is understandable. So I would not say that with the current top notch things, you don't have to change the compensation. Anyways, so all right. So how do we call the populations? Like we call them bright, we call them dim, we call them normal. So while we are reporting our populations, you will see in the reports, and sometimes it is hard to understand when people are calling it bright, why they are calling it bright, and stuff like that. So and other things as well, right? So let's see what is the definition of the every population. So the bright population, they are saying the population of interest shows higher intensity level compared to what it normally expresses. So that's the first definition. And the second definition is population of interest shows higher intensity level compared to the population that normally expresses the antibody. So there are two ways that you are going to call something bright. So you can see over here, this mixture of these cells, if you can see my arrow, these are the normal T cells with the normal CD7 expression. When you see a bright CD7 expression like this, then you would call it bright as compared to the normal T cells. So this is one of the definitions that you start calling it bright as compared to the normal. Some of the places, they just use the like they have kind of the Kaluza and stuff like that. They have kind of those lines, and they call it based on that. But this is the basic knowledge. Similarly, coming to over here, so this over here, they are showing, actually it's all messed up, but what they are showing over here is this. So now you're calling this as bright CD11C in these abnormal cells. Why? Because you are comparing the 11C with the normal monocytes. So these are the normal monocytes and 11C of the normal monocytes. You are comparing them with the normal monocytes and these blasts, and you're going to see if there is a bright 11C. And this over here is a B cell population. We know that there is CD19 over here and a bright and the dim CD11C. Coming to bimodal population, when we call a bimodal population, so the population of interest presents two separate intensities of the antibody, and you have to describe the intensity of the both the populations. So let's see. So basically, if you see over here, this normal CD19 in the normal B cells. So basically, this is the normal B cells with the normal CD19. Don't like these arrows are all messed up, but these CD19 in the normal B cells. But then you see the abnormal B cells, and there is a bimodal expression with a dim population for CD19, dimmer population than this one, which is more brighter than for the CD19. So basically, there is a bimodal population, and when you're reporting your cases, you have to tell that there are these two populations, and then you have to say that these might both represent the same thing, but just that they are kind of bimodal. Coming to dim, so then they are saying there are two ways that you are calling dim, similar to what you are calling bright. So the population of interest shows lower intensity compared to what is normal should express. So the same population, for example, this is the whole T cells, right? These are the normal T cells that have been over here gated. So these are the normal T cells, the CD8 T cells and the CD4 T cells. So this is like a CD4, CD8 T cells, not the double positive. But again, as compared to the normal T cell, these are the abnormal T cells that are having dim expression for CD8 as compared to the normal. So then we call it as dim. But if you would see, like if someone would like when we are not very advanced in this, someone would say that, okay, there is a CD8 expression, why we are calling it dim? That's the reason that we are calling it dim, because it is dimmer than the normal T cells. So that's why it is important to know where the normal lies. Next, similar to what we had bright, we had population of interest showing lower intensity as compared to the population that normally expresses that antibody. So for example, this is the CD5 expression of the normal T cells. But however, these are the normal, these are not the normal, these are not the T cells, these are B cells. But we are comparing the expression to the T cells, and we are saying that the CD5 is positive on the abnormal B cells, but dim as compared to the T cells expression of CD5. So that's what we can say. Intermediate. So intermediate, the population of interest shows equivalent intensity compared to the population that normally expresses that antibody. For example, this is the CD5, that is the normal expression of in the T cells. And again, this is the abnormal B cell that is having similar equivalent CD5, and then we call it as intermediate. Negative, the population of interest loses expression of antibody when the antigen should be present. So for example, this is again our normal T cells that has CD45. As I said always, that the lymphocytes and T cells, they have bright CD45. However, these are abnormal T cells, and again, they are losing CD45. So that's something that's negative. Also, the population of interest normally does not express the antibody. So we know that this population is NK cell. Why? Because there is no surface CD3. Remember that the NK cells do have the epsilon and zeta chains of the intracytoplasmic chains of CD3. So they will be showing in the intracytoplasmic tube. However, surface CD3 is not present in the NK cells, and NK cells, they have CD56 by nature. So this population is NK cells, and they do not express, they are negative for CD3. So that's something that we call negative. Normal, what we call normal. Again, the population of interest shows equivalent intensity compared to what it would normally express. So the difference between intermediate and normal, intermediate is something that is equivalent to something else, right? And normal is what the normal expression of that particular thing, it is lying at the normal place. So you can see over here, they are showing over here normal T cells with CD5 expression, and these are the abnormal T. So basically, if you compare the y-axis, this is lying at the same y-axis as this, right? So the normal T cells, they're having the same CD5 expression as compared to the abnormal T cells that are having the same CD5 population, the intensity. Coming to the variable, when we call variable means it is variable in expression, as the heterogeneous in expression, as the name suggests. So basically, if you would see, these are the normal T cells again with the CD3 expression that you can see. Now here are the abnormal T cells, and we'll call them a variable in expression for CD3 because it is kind of having a heterogeneous expression. So those are that's about it. So those are the ways that we call things, and that's how we determine what to call in our reports and what they are in nature. Any questions here or anything to add? I mean, I would I would love to hear things.
For us, we excluded the variable, and we not excluding, but we merged the bimodal and the variable to say it is in heterogeneous, which means that there is different levels of expression of the antibody, but it's the same.
Okay, cool. Rajesh, you have anything to add? Rajesh?
No, I'm good. No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, good. All right. So after going through that, let's I can open the video as well right now, because everything now is similar to the video. We just did the general analysis, which was extra, but let's see. I mean, if I say again and again, it might go into my mind better. All right. So so the gating of the myeloid, what we used to do in the wood list, we have to make sure that the particular populations we are gating, and we know which population are what, we give them color as a different color. So for example, the erythroid cells, we know that they are expressing CD71. And there is a caveat to this. I mean, there are mature, immature, different levels of erythroid cells. There is CD71 still are present in the nucleated erythroid cells. They kind of lose in the non-nucleated erythroid cells, but the early on erythroid cells, the immature or early immature stages of erythroid cells, they do not have CD71. So that we have to remember. But however, the normal gating of erythroid cells, we gate them as dim CD45. So obviously they are erythroids, they do not have CD45, and the CD71 is an erythroid marker, so we gate them there. Important thing to remember, after we have gated the erythroid cells, we have to see between CD15 versus CD71, and the CD15 in the same area of the erythroid. So basically, you can see it's the same blue color, and if you can notice over here, very tiny dots. So we have to exclude the CD15 positive cells, which are actually the granulocytes. They are not the erythroid cells. Coming to then we have to also exclude the CD34 positive blasts. So we'll plot like against CD71 and CD34, and exclude the erythroid cells exclude the CD34 blasts from the erythroid cells. So B cells, they are gated on CD19 and lower site scatter. CD19 positive cells with higher site scatter can be plasma cells. So basically, if you remember, I mean, we haven't again talked about it, but normal plasma cells, they will have CD19, and they will lose CD19 when they are neoplastic or abnormal plasma cells. They lose CD19. So basically, however, plasma cells will have a higher site scatter than the normal B cells, and the B cells will be lying at a lower site scatter. Plasma cells will be lying at the higher site scatter. So now coming to the mature versus immature B cells, and as we all know, there is a spectrum of B cell maturation. We'll see that in the Brentwood article too. But the early on B cells, actually, let me. So this is the B cell, right? So the early on B cell, as we know, this is the bone marrow, and this is the interfollicular area, follicular phase, perifollicular area, or post-GC area, pre-GC, follicular, post-GC. So the early on stages, the pro B cell. So again, this everything that is in the bone marrow is still an immature B cell. And even if anything from these three stages, if it becomes neoplastic, we are going to call it BALL, right? Now, the early stages, that is pro B cell stage, that expresses CD34. However, the CD34 is kind of lost in case of the pre-B cell and immature B cells. These are also immature, but these are the late stages of immature. Similarly, TDT, CD10, and LMO2. So we'll come in detail of this chart, but since we are doing the myeloid here. So again, the CD34 blasts, they are in the early the cells, or they are in the blast, and then as these kind of mature, they kind of start losing CD34 and gaining CD19. So basically, so CD19 they start losing, and then there is CD19 that they start gaining. So then the immature B cells, they will be lying over here with the CD19 that has been acquired, and CD34 that is kind of losing. And then the mature B cells, of course, it doesn't have the blast marker. It has lost the blast marker, and it has gained the CD19 even more. And it will be lying over here. These are the mature B cells. We'll be going through hematogones eventually, but like all the expressions of hematogones. So, but it is not mentioned in here. It's more of a myeloid gating anyways. Okay, mast cells. So CD117 versus site scatter will be used to get on CD117 positive cells, and the brightest expression of mast cells. So this is not the mast cells, right? These are the blast. The red population is the blast because they are CD117 positive. CD117 is a blast marker as well, like immature cell marker as well. It can be seen in immature erythroids as well. So that's a caveat that you have to remember. But you can see a little bit of dots over here if you can appreciate. These are the scattered mast cells that are present in a normal bone marrow. If there is increase in the mast cells, for example, what they are showing over here, if there is an increase in the mast cells in the plot, then you should investigate that population. You should start doing a mast cell panel that we used to add over there, and you should investigate those CD117 bright population. Coming to CD33 versus HLA-DR. So I have, I don't know if, so it's kind of blurred in what I have shown to you, but I think I have shown to you this. HLA-DR, brightest HLA-DR is in the monocytes. So that's something to remember. And it is tinge brighter than for CD33 as compared to the granulocytes. So granulocytes will be having dimmer HLA-DR as compared to the monocytes, and CD33 is kind of a little bit variable, but still again positive. So again, for the granulocytes and myeloid may have included in general monocyte gate. So in the monocyte gate, there might be some granulocytes and blasts that might have been included, and you have to exclude them by doing the CD45 site scatter. You know that there is where the blast gate lies, and then a brightest site scatter, there is where the granulocytes lies. So you have to kind of purify the monocyte gate in that fashion. So far, I mean, is it being very complicated? Is it being clear? Anyone?
It's clear, Dr. Kansha.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, good. So let's move
Hello.
forward. Yeah, hello.
Hello, Dr. Akansha. I had a
Oh.
query. When we were speaking about dim expression,
Mhm.
does it always imply to the positive population or it could imply to a negative population as well?
I mean, there are different things, right? The negative, if you are going to say it is a negative population, dim population is dim as compared to something. Do you see that? Negative will lie over here. For example, this is a negative population. It has nothing. A dim population, if there is a dim population, it would lie over here as compared to this, which is actually, I mean, if you see the this population is dimmer than the monocytes. However, this population is the negative population. So we don't call dim and negative, we don't use them synonymously. They are two different things.
And if you're asking about, in some reports, they say dim to negative, that
Yeah.
means that there is a spectrum of population where one end of the spectrum is negative and the other end of the spectrum is dim. So that's what they mean, dim to negative, if they say something like that. But as such, we don't call negative population as dim. Dim always means dim positive.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So any other questions any that comes to your mind, guys? Okay. So again, CD15, as I have been emphasizing again and again, it is more of the mature granulocyte marker. So we get the CD15 positive cells out. These are not the monocytes. These are the granulocytes that has CD33 and CD15. Plasma cells. So plasma cells will have the brightest CD38. That's something we have to remember. And using the CD45 and CD38, we are going to get the plasma cells. So we used to have multiple tubes, and that the previous that we saw was the gating of the first tube. Now gating of the second tube is more of myelomonocytic tube. And myelomonocytic tube, we have to gate the monocytes again. So we gated based on CD64. So CD64 bright population. As we said, the 64 is variable in case of granulocytes, and we also saw that in our previous sessions. But 64 is also a mature monocyte marker. So the bright CD64 along with the bright CD45, that's where the monocytes are going to lie. So that you have to gate. Again, so HLA-DR versus CD16 plot. The bright HLA-DR over here and dim CD16. So you have to remember that the bright CD16 is more of the mature granulocytes, and the monocytes lie in the dim CD16 and bright HLA-DR areas. So once we have gated that, we need to exclude the granulocytes because this gate also has granulocytes over here, right? So then you have to go and go into HLA-DR versus CD14, and we have already seen that CD14, the mature CD14 will express the mature monocytes will express CD14, and as they go immature, they lose their CD14, and they will start having like this kind of HLA-DR expression. So basically, it's bright and then bright when it is immature, and then it dips in the promonocyte stage, and then it again becomes bright in the monocyte stage. This is kind of the way that immature and mature population of monocytes are going to look like. So again, you have to exclude the granulocytes because they are CD14 negative and they are dimmer for HLA-DR as compared to the monocytes. Then after, there are still some granulocytes that are remaining in there. So you can go over there and go to CD64 and exclude the granulocytes based on high site scatter. So as I was talking, the negative, this is the negative population, right? So the CD13, CD64 negative population is the lymphocytes, and we call it a lymphocyte rough gate. So that's, you can gate out like that. Okay. Important thing is dim CD45. It's not showing it over here. Okay, this is side scatter, this is CD34. Dim CD45 gate that we already had. We gate the CD34 blasts on that. And however, as we have already seen, the hematogones will be present in this area as well. Now, coming to the differentiation of basophils and plasmacytoid dendritic cells. So as we know over here, in this area, we do have the plasmacytoid dendritic cells over here as well, and some basophils too. So now we have to differentiate the basophils and plasmacytoid dendritic cells. The HLA-DR is the one. So basically, both of them will have 123, and this is something that you have to mug up. You have to remember that plasmacytoid dendritic cells and basophils, they both have CD123. Now, how you are going to differentiate between them lies in HLA-DR. The plasmacytoid dendritic cells will have higher HLA, brighter HLA-DR as compared to the basophils, which have dimmer HLA-DR. Eosinophils. So eosinophils.
Dr. Kansha,
Yeah, go ahead.
hello.
Yes, I can
The
hear.
basophil will have, or the dendritic cell will have the dimmer HLA-DR?
See, you can see the notification, like the annotation here. The basophils have dim HLA-DR as compared to the plasmacytoid dendritic cells.
Okay.
So eosinophilic rough gate. So we know that eosinophils have maybe the highest side scatter of everything. So the bright CD45 and higher side scatter gate has the eosinophilic, and they are called as eosinophilic rough gate. And after we have the eosinophilic rough gate, they do have some grands in there as well. So in order to exclude those grands, you can go in the CD16 and versus 45, exclude those grands, and you can just do the CD16 negative cells after that, and you can say that those are the eosinophilic rough gate. So we'll go through a normal analysis eventually. Let's see quickly. So this is a normal analysis that they have an example for. And let's see if we are able to see all the populations here. This is peripheral blood, remember. So the peripheral blood, even if they are showing some blasts here, they will be less than 1%. And they will not be more than 1% because more than 1% blast is not normal in case of peripheral blood. So over here, you can see this red population, which is CD34 positive. This is the normal blast population. And you can see that they do not have CD15. As I'm saying again and again, CD15 is the normal granulocyte marker, like more mature granulocyte marker. These blasts, when they are normal, they will be more variable. So for example, you can see over here the CD13. I don't know if it is visible very well if you're using your mobiles, but maybe you can enlarge your screen if you're using your mobiles. But you can see over here, the blast populations will have kind of variable CD13. And this is what we usually see. They have variable HLA-DR. So this is like we already saw the maturation of how the blasts happen, the immature cells happen, and we have been talking about that. They are kind of variable. That's that. And the blast, they have some CD38 as well, but again, the plasma cells will be the brightest CD38. So this is how the normal blast they look like. Again, this over here, that is this population, the blue and this blue population, this is more of a lymphocyte population. And this pink population, we'll see more better in myelomonocytic tube, but this pink population is a monocyte population. And we know that it is monocyte population, as I have been telling, that it is brighter for CD33 as compared to the granulocytes. So over here, you can see it's brighter for CD33. And it's kind of, this is kind of a very, like a dirty one. I'll show you better one for myelomonocytes. So this is a myelomonocyte, the peripheral blood myelomonocyte, and we can compare as to how the granulocytes versus myelomonocytes. We have seen that in previous sessions as well, but we can see that the granulocytes have brighter CD. Let me mute someone's unmute. Okay. The granulocytes will have brighter CD15, and the monocytes have dimmer CD15 as compared to the granulocytes. The monocytes have brighter CD33 over here. They have brighter HLA-DR. So again, the HLA-DR is very bright in the monocytes as compared to the granulocytes. So the green population is the granulocyte, pink population is the monocyte. Again, over here it is showing that CD15, HLA-DR, the same thing. And they will not, so if the mature granulocytes and the mature monocytes, they will not have CD117. The CD117 is an immature marker, and you start seeing it in the immature myeloid cells. So CD34, CD117, they are called as immature myeloid markers too. Then coming to CD64, CD64 is brighter in case of monocytes. It is kind of dimmer in case of the granulocytes. And then let's go down. So here they have gated the monocytes, as I was showing earlier, that they have gated the monocytes based on the HLA-DR that is bright, and the CD33 that is brighter, a little bit brighter than the normal granulocytes as well. Again, CD16 is more of a granulocyte marker. So the 16 bright is seen in granulocytes. However, 64, as I was saying, the 64 will also have a spectrum of the monocytes, but the mature monocytes more are going to show the CD64 that is brightest. CD14 is a more mature monocyte marker, and it kind of is not seen in immature monocytes. So you can compare the CD14, which is negative actually in case of granulocytes, and even the CD64, though some of it is expressing over here, but largely it is very dim to negative over here in the granulocytes. And this is how your monocyte population looks like. So again, this CD123 over here, you can see, when you see this population, I wish they have a CD123 versus HLA-DR. But when you have this population, you know that your basophils and plasmacytoid cells are going to lie here. So that's how we go for HLA-DR and differentiate between those two. Now coming to the bone marrow. So the bone marrow, again, so normal blast, the red cell population is the normal blast, and the normal blast are going to have variable expression. So for example, when it is abnormal, we are going to come to that. When it is abnormal, it will be a big blob that is sitting with no variable expression, either very bright or or dim, but not this kind of variability or this kind of maturation pattern, for that matter, that is seen in the blast will be absent in those abnormal blasts. So then you see that there is variability for CD13. You can see over here in this plot, there is variability of CD33. There is variability of HLA-DR. 34 positive, we know that those are the blast anyways. And that's that. And then the blast, normally they have CD38 as well. We have seen that in our previous session that they have some CD38, but again, the plasma cells will be the ones that are brightest in the CD38. So now I'm just talking about the blast for now. So we saw about everything. There is HLA-DR 13, 34, and 33. So let's see if there is any more information here. So why do we know these are normal myeloid blasts? Because they're expressing the myeloid markers, right? So these are not normal B cell blasts that I'm talking about. These are normal myeloid blasts because these are these are expressing the myeloid markers, CD117, CD13, CD33, all these are myeloid markers. Then coming to the other population. The other population is the granulocyte population. So again, as we have seen the granulocyte population, it is brighter in CD15, as you can see over here. It is dimmer in CD38 as compared to the blasts. And let's see. This pink population again is the monocyte population. So once you know how the and where, how bright, how dim, and how everything, where you are going to gate and what you're going to do, then you start getting some clarity as to what expression and how the populations look like. So as I have been emphasizing again and again, 33 is brighter in case of monocytes as compared to the granulocytes. The HLA-DR is brighter and so forth. So those are the areas that you would. Another thing that you should also remember that the basophils will be having some CD38 as well, the population. And again, the CD123, HLA-DR are the ones that are going to help you. So again, the myelomonocytic population in the bone marrow, everything remains the same. Just that there will be some immature of cells here as well. So, but not a lot. So basically, when we were seeing peripheral blood, we were seeing the monocytes right here, and we were not seeing this kind of immature population. But there is some immature population that is present in the blast here. So that's normal expression, normal spectrum of the monocytes that are present. The same thing over here. I mean, there should not be more than 5% blasts in a normal bone marrow. But again, 5% blasts are present in a normal bone marrow, like less than, or less than 5% blasts are present in a normal bone marrow. So the myelomonocytic plot is the same that we have been discussing. I don't think that I need to emphasize again and again. Maybe I can. I mean, repetition causes goes into the memory much better. So brighter CD33, brighter 14, brighter 11B, brighter 64. I'm talking about the monocytes, right? So all of these are features of monocytes as compared to the granulocytes. Again, the granulocytes have spectrums, and those spectrums have variable like CD13 and CD33, and dimmer 14 as compared to there is a spectrum of CD11B, and again, the 11B can be there in the granulocytes, in the more mature granulocytes as well. So all those signs that we have read in previous previous sessions, they're all shown over here with 13 and 16 showing this kind of diagonal appearance, and with the acquisition of 13 as the granulocytes progress, I mean, as the maturation progresses, and the acquisition of 16 as the maturation progresses. So all of this is better visible in case of bone marrow, because the bone marrow, we see the spectrum of myelomonocytes, monocytes, and myelocytes, metamyelocytes, and granulocytes, and those spectrum is going to show very well nicely in the bone marrow. So now they're comparing the bone marrow, how normal myeloid will be in comparison to the T cell markers. And you can see a normal myeloid blast is going to be negative for the T cell markers, CD2, CD3. There can be a little dim CD4 here, dim CD7, but not bright, dim CD5 that can be present. Okay, so once we are done with the normal, now they are diving into abnormal. So as we were saying, the normal myeloid blast, there would be dim or partial CD5 and CD2 expression, right? So there is a partial CD5 and CD2 expression in case of normal. In case of normal, it will be lying over here, like over here, it's a dim area. But when it starts showing over here, when it starts acquiring CD5 and CD2, we know that it is more of abnormal myeloid population. Similarly for 19, so the normal myeloid blasts will be negative for 19, right? They will be 34 positive and negative for 19. These are your normal B cells that are in blue. So the normal myeloid blast will be 19 negative. However, when it starts acquiring 19, it will be more of a abnormal population. And this question I asked the last time as well, but can you give me an example, like not the ones that are doing flow cytometry for a long time, but someone who is starting, can you give me the example of CD19 acquisition in case of myeloid blasts? Or for example,
Eight-
good.
821.
Very good. Yes, exactly. So 821, one of the important features is that it starts acquiring the CD19. So that's something we have to remember. So as I was saying, CD117 is also an immature myeloid marker. So normal myeloid blasts will be having CD34 and 117. That's the normal expression of a myeloid blast. However, the myeloid blasts, they can lose their CD34 in some cases, and those are the scenarios that we have to remember. And also normal promyelocytes, like not abnormal promyelocytes will also lose their CD34 as well. So that's that. So then we come to what I was talking about, a big blob sitting somewhere, right? So this is the variable expression of CD13 that is seen in a normal myeloid blast, right? So then if you see a uniform bright CD13, that is a big blob sitting in a bright area, that you start thinking that this is abnormal. Again, the same thing with CD33. CD33, as we know, it's kind of variable expression in the blasts. And when you start seeing uniform bright CD33, that's a abnormal expression. So again, over here, you can see the blasts that are in maturation on the right-hand side with the CD117 and CD13 plot. Over here, you see that they have abnormal CD13, as we were talking about the big blob sitting at the bright area, and they are losing their CD117. So again, CD117, as I was saying, is immature myeloid marker or immature like blast marker for the myeloid series. If it is losing the CD13, CD117, then it is abnormal. So the same thing they are showing over here. It's not only that the bright, I was saying that a big blob sitting somewhere, I was saying, right? So big blob, if it sits in the bright CD33, that's abnormal. But again, if the normal maturation pattern is not seen, and if it is sitting dimmer or decreased CD33 as well, so that is also abnormal. You should not sit somewhere as a big blob. Again, the HLA-DR, again, that has to be a spectrum in case of normal blasts. And over here, they are decrease in CD33 and decrease in HLA-DR. So they are abnormal blasts. Coming to this plot, so CD123, normal myeloid blast will not have CD123. So they will be having dim CD123. You can see this is an abnormal blast because again it is losing CD34 and it is gaining 123. So that's something that you can remember. All right, so myeloid blasts, they do not have CD11B. When they start acquiring CD11B, there is partial dim CD11B that is being acquired here. So that is kind of abnormality here. All right, so we already read about this, that there will be in myelomonocytic populations, there will be maturing pattern in the bone marrow, right? And as they mature, they gain 13, 16, 11B. So they are showing now the abnormal maturation and how it will look like. So as we were talking, the diagonal area of 13 and 16. So basically acquiring 16 and acquiring 13, this is kind of a normal. However, when you start seeing there is kind of acquisition or retention, discontinuous maturation, retention of CD13, that's abnormal myelomonocytic. And this, they are showing that this is a hemodiluted marrow. Why we are calling it hemodiluted marrow? So this over here is a non-hemodiluted marrow, and this is showing a spectrum, if you may, that is having CD16 variable expression and CD11B variable expression. But again, over here, you see that these are really the mature grants. So when you have a hemodiluted marrow, that is more of a peripheral blood, right? So you start seeing more of a mature cells, and that spectrum of immaturity is kind of lost. So then that we know that this is a hemodiluted marrow. So again, the V pattern that we see in CD13 and CD38, like it, this, as I have been saying in the last session, CD13 dip, right? So in the myelocyte stage, it dips the CD13 over here, and then it acquires the CD13 as well. So this is more immature. This is coming to the maturity. So this is a dip, but over here they are showing that abnormal retention of CD13, that is abnormal over here. So again, the granulocytes over here, they are showing normal granulocytes without retention of CD64. Over here, they are saying that abnormally retained CD64. Let's not go into detail of that. So that's about the myelomonocytic. If anyone has any comments, anything to add, any questions, you can feel free to ask me right now. Was it too much to take? Was it a little bit clearer than what it has been before? Arey, start talking, Ray. Hello?
Yes.
I just need, I think, revision again and again for all.
Yeah.
I think we need to read a lot as well after your sessions and before your sessions to
Yeah, that's
actually
why.
imbibe what's going on right now.
What was going on?
I think we need to read a lot after your
Yeah,
sessions and also
agreed.
before the session to get a hold of actually what is being shown in the
Agreed.
graphs and all.
And that's
Yes,
why I'm
actually.
recording the sessions, and that's the reason I'm recording the session, so that you can go over the sessions again and again and start making sense out of what I am talking.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's about that. Let's dive into B now. Do you guys want to take maybe a 5 minutes break or 2-3 minutes break to relax your mind a little, so that before we start a new topic?
Okay.
Okay.
I guess we can continue.
You want to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. What about other people? Does anyone wants to take a break, 2-3 minutes water break or something like that? Okay. All right. So continue. B cell. So let's see the B cell over here first. Let me. So I don't think I showed this to you yesterday. I mean, I showed this to the US population, but not to here. So as I was talking briefly earlier, this is how the B cell matures. And let's see the stages of B cell when they are maturing. So the bone marrow, there are 3 stages: pro B cell, pre B cell, and mature B cell. First thing to come is the cytoplasmic mu heavy chain. Once it comes, the immature B cells acquires a membrane IgM, and then it goes into the lymph node. So this whole thing is a lymph node, pre-germinal center, follicular phase, and post-germinal center. And the pre-germinal center, the first thing is the naive B cells, and these naive B cells have IgM and IgD both. Then it becomes extrafollicular B blast, which or else it becomes a mantle cell. The extrafollicular B blast goes into the follicle and becomes a centroblast, then after a centrocyte. And then the post-GC will be having plasma cells with secretion of IgM, GDA, and E, all the immunoglobulins, and all the centrocytes will go in form the memory B cells. So naive B cells, mantle cells are the precursors for mantle cell lymphoma, right? These three populations, as I was saying, these are the precursors of BALL. The germinal center, the neoplasms, so centroblast, centrocytes, we have read about follicular lymphoma already. Burkitt lymphoma, some of the GCB, DLBCL, Hodgkin's lymphoma are also denoted to be germinal center in origin. So those are the germinal center origin neoplasms. These memory B cells, they are the origin for marginal zone and MALT lymphomas. So that's something you have to remember. Also the CLL, SLL, and the post-GC DLBCL, those are more of post-GC origin. And plasma cells neoplasm, as we know, the long-lived plasma cell, so there are two plasma cells. There is a short-lived plasma cell that is in the pre-GC area, but the long-lived plasma cell, those are your normal or most common plasma cells that you see that are secreting those immunoglobulins. So those plasma cells, they will be giving rise to your plasma cell neoplasms. Right. So then let's see how the antigen expression varies in case of B cell. So as I was saying, in the pro B cell, CD34, it kind of stops, like the expression kind of vanishes as the cell matures, despite that this is still immature cells, right? These are also pre-B cell and immature B cells are still immature cells. And if they, so that's why we, in the BALL, we have different kind of expressions based on what the stage of the blast is. These all are blasts. So what the stage of the blast is, based on that, the BALL will be expressing. And there will be some BALLs that will not be having CD34, that will not be, I hope I'm recording this, that will not be having TDT. So for example, if the immature B cell over here, they will not be having TDT. So there are these cells, and you do not have to confuse that, oh, it doesn't have CD34, it doesn't have TDT, what do I do? I mean, there are other markers that are going to help you, CD10, LMO2, and the other things like loss of kappa lambda and stuff like that, gain of myeloid antigens and stuff like that. So, so 34, TDT, CD10, LMO2 are there in these stages. CD19 is kind of present throughout. However, CD19 dims in case of plasma cell, still present. And if it is an abnormal plasma cell, it becomes negative. CD79A is again more of a common B and plasma cell marker. It will also be present on the plasma cells similarly. PAX5, however, is not present in the plasma cells. So that's something, it stops here. It is not present in the plasma cells. CD20, so it is acquiring more and more in case of maturity. That's why in the early immature stages, we will not have CD20. It is more of a mature marker. And then it will be lost in case of plasma cells. CD38, as I was telling before, that even the CD38 is more of immature B cell marker here. It's not just the plasma cell marker, if you may. The CD38 is also seen in the germinal centers. So that's why when you have those lymph node that I will show the lymph node graphs, they are bright in CD10 and CD38 when there is a follicular hyperplasia. So when there are prominent germinal centers, there is follicular hyperplasia, you'll see a separate population that is bright CD10, bright CD38, and we'll be able to differentiate based on that. Again, CD38, it becomes dimmer in the memory B cells, and then it becomes brighter in the plasma cells again, and that's how we get the CD38 as well. The CD10, LMO2, BCL6, HGAL, these are more of your germinal center markers. So we know about CD10 and BCL2 that are in regular practice. LMO2 we use in follicular lymphoma, if you remember. That is sometimes used as well. At GAL, we didn't used to use the GAL in our labs, and we still don't use in our new lab. So that's that. MUM1. MUM1 is more of plasma cell marker, and it is also called as IRF4 MUM1. So it's that's why I mean when you go for Hodgkin's lymphoma, sometimes you do MUM1 in those Hodgkin lymphoma cases, and that those cells they acquire MUM1 as well, but those are more of the abnormal B cells that acquire MUM1. That's a small thing that to remember. CD138. CD138 is more of mature plasma cell, like plasma cell population, and as you see, the CD38 is not 138 is not present anywhere, so it is more specific. BLIMP1 CD138 is more specific to the plasma cell. So that's from our book that we have shown. Coming to the Brentwood, the Brentwood. So again, normal B cell expression maturation. The Brentwood has also shown similar to what we have been discussing. So let's emphasize again the same thing. TDT34, it kind of loses in the immature, they are still immature, late forms and mid forms. And so these are still blasts, okay? CD10, it's a follicular center marker, as I was saying before, and it is there in the early on the early, mid, and late blasts as well. CD10 is one of the important markers that we use, and it will be bright in case of BALS, so we use that. CD38, so you can see there is this spectrum. So CD10 is becoming dimmer, and CD38 is becoming brighter in the later stages. And as we already know, the CD38, it comes back in the plasma cell population, very bright. CD19, we saw that it was a common, like normal expression everywhere. CD20, as I said, it is coming in later on stages, and it becomes brighter in case of immature late. So this immature late stage, when you have BLL of this immature late stage, the things that are normally going to help you will not help you. Like there will be no TDT, there will be no 34. And then you will start having CD20 as well. So that, I mean, you start thinking, is it a mature population? And then you have to go to kappa lambda and other. So the mature population should be either kappa lambda, both kappa lambda if they are polyclonal. So if they are either kappa lambda, they will they are more mature. If they are losing kappa lambda, because the immature B cell population, they do not have surface expression of kappa and lambda, so that will help you as well. So these stages become hard to differentiate. Again, HRDR is okay. IgD, IgM that I was showing over here, and let's go to ACE again. So I was showing here that IgD, IgM, it comes in the naive B cell stage, right? So so over here you can see the IgD, IgM, it is more appearing in the naive mantle B cell areas. IgD, IgM kind of going towards follicular and marginal zones as well, follicular center. Again, kappa and lambda, as I was saying, the early on kappa and lambda, they are not going to have expression of kappa and lambda in the early on stages. And then as the cell matures, it starts having kappa or lambda expression, and both or either one if it is abnormal. Does that help? Okay. You guys have to start talking more. It's more of a discussion rather than lecture. I'm not doing a lecture here. All right. Any questions so far, guys?
No, I guess
all
it's
the
all good.
maturation has to be studied, actually. Everyone has to be studying very well, because it will help in differentiating between normal and abnormal.
Right, yeah. That's why we are starting from basics to normal gating.
It's a very important part, the normal is the base, the normal, knowing the normal, studying the maturation pattern and what rise and what is gone, the most important in differentiating.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then when you start seeing the cells, you start making sense of what it is showing. That becomes more clearer when you are seeing abnormal populations. All right. So now the normal B cell gating. So we saw the normal B cell maturation, they mature, everything. So in the normal B cells, they will have CD19, they will have CD20. One thing to remember is when you have CAR T cell treatment, the CD19 can be lost. So then you have to gate the B cells based on the other B cell markers. And that's what they are saying over here. So B cells are gated on CD19 population. So CD19 versus site scatter. However, the abnormal B cells can be CD19 negative. And if they are negative, you have to gate those B cell populations in the other B cell markers. So CD20, CD22, if you have a cytoplasmic tube, then CD79A and so forth. So those will be how you're going to gate your B cells. Remember one thing, that when you're going to have so again, this negative CD19 bright CD5 is your T cells, and this bright CD19 negative CD5 is your B cells. So they are showing over here there can be some junk that can lie in between this, and this will look more of a diagonal junk, and you have to remove the junk from the gatings that you are doing.
I have a question here. Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, we were saying about junk and debris. How do you actually get to know what is a chunk and what is a like my population? How do we determine that?
So it is, once you start doing flow and you are doing flow for few years, even when you are doing flow for 1 year, it is very hard. Once you start doing flow for few years, you'll start knowing where the junk lies, as I'm showing you again and again, where the junks are lying. Where if you are expecting that there is a junk that might lie here, you will know that that you have to look for junks, and there is where the junk is lying. Like
One clue is like when you see this, especially this diagonal shape right in the middle, not positive or not going on either side, and you'll see that in all the plots, like not only just 19 versus 5, you'll see that in 5 versus 3, 5 versus 7, all of them, it will be exactly in the same location, diagonal. Then you can say that it's junk.
right.
Yeah, they will not be positive, clearly positive for anything. They will just lie in the diagonal.
It is like a rocket, something. It's like a one line, like a rocket going in between the positive and the negative without any commitment to one of the negative or the positive population. And we call it as non-specific binding. And as much as you do like washing, excluding the debris, focusing on the singlets, by time you will not have the junk. But even if you have it as a debris or non-specific binding, it looks like a rocket, one straight line, that it is not a rounded population as we see in the two other, like the 19 positive population, a rounded one, the B5, the CD5 positive population, a rounded one. But this one is like a rocket, is something like a rocket in between, and is not committed to any. For cases of CD19 negative for CAR B cell, we use the 79A mostly because for cases of B cell, because not all of cases have CD20, so we depend on CD79A rather than CD20, because most of the cases of B cell lymphoblastic lymphoma leukemia does not have CD20. So 79A is a substitute for cases of carboplatinum taking patient.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong. The comet tailing pattern that is basically like seen in AML. Then how would we differentiate that tailing with the junk or the debris diagonal tailing?
That's the thing, like it won't be positive for anything, and you will see that in the same location in all your plots, in all combinations.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's the catch point. It will be present in all the graphs.
Exactly, yes.
You see this shape? this shape is the shape of non-specific binding.
Okay, good discussions. So so yeah, we saw about the T cells, we saw about the B cells, and the T cells we get based on the CD5 positive and CD19 negative populations. Plasma cells, as we are so like this B cell getting is very easy. I mean, the plasma cells, they will be having the CD38 that is brightest, so that's where we get the plasma cells. And the mature B cells, as we know, they will be expressing a polyclonal kappa and lambda population. So if you start seeing a monoclonal population, that is an immature that is a abnormal mature population. So and then the other thing is that the immature B cells, they will be having no expression of kappa lambda, as we already saw in that figure. So the light chain negative B cells will lie here. So again, the same plot that we had before. So as I showed you, let's go back to our nutshell. Okay, as I showed you, so what we are talking about is CD10, right? So CD10 is there in the previous, in the pre and pro cell stage. So the early B cells, they are going to have CD10. As it goes to the intermediate B cells, the CD10, it decreases. And when it loses the CD10, it becomes a mature B cell stage. So that's something that is handy. And that's also helpful when we'll read about the hematogones. That's also very helpful. Okay. So that's your normal B cell plot that you are seeing over here. So you know that again the CD10 that is variable, and in the more immature that's expressing, in the mature it is not expressing, and CD19 that is bright, those are your B cells, and they're polyclonal for kappa and lambda. So you can see they're polyclonal for kappa and lambda. The bright CD38 will be your plasma cells. So all the things that we just discussed are basically over here. Germinal center B cells. So that's what I was coming to. So let's see. Kangya. So the germinal center B cells, as we said, that it will have CD10. That's one of the markers, and CD38 that is bright in the germinal center B cells. And we don't do BCL6 at GL by flow, so that will not be helpful. So see over here, the brightest CD10 and the brightest CD38. You can see this population. That is your germinal center B cell. They will have a brighter CD20 as well, so as compared to the others. And again, as you see, brighter CD20 and brighter CD38. Those are your germinal center B cells, and those will be prominent in case of follicular hyperplasia, when you have follicular hyperplasia. Coming to abnormal BALL, so I mean, BALL we'll read more in detail when we are doing the cases, but as I have been showing that the CD10 is present in the early BALL blasts, and CD38 is present as well. CD20 is negative. So basically, as I have been showing that the more mature cells, they start acquiring CD20, but the early on cells, they are negative for CD20. CD10 is a very important marker, as we have seen before. So if we go back, the CD10 is important immature marker. So that's how you know that they are immature. And again, CD38, yeah, the same thing over here. So let's skip this part. So subset of T cells can have CD10. That's what they are showing over here. So that's your B cell gating. Anything to add? Any comments? Anything? Question? Okay. So before we go into T cell gating, actually, let me just message in the US group that we are going to be late in the Rajesh, Rajeshwari, do you feel 2 to 3 is better for the US population?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so let's me message in the group 2 to 4, right? So let's do 2 to 4 for our session then. Okay. Okay, so give me exactly 2 minutes. I just want to make sure that my kid has eaten what I gave him and also want to grab some water. So I'll be back in 2 minutes. Right now it is 10:31. You also can take a breath of relaxation and let's give a little pause and come back, okay? You guys have to start speaking. I know that eventually when we'll go through further sessions, you will be really chatty, but you don't speak early on. I'm back. I'll be back, okay?
Would we stop or what? Hello, guys. Are we going? Are you still there?
Yeah, we are still here. We are not going anywhere. Just that we are taking a break. We'll be
Okay.
back.
For how
For how
long?
long? For how long the
Just
break?
2 3 minutes break. Just
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
normal.
We'll come back.
2 3 minutes.
We'll come
Yeah,
back.
come back in 2 3 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm back, guys. Let me know if you're back too.
I think you can start.
Okay. So now diving into the T cell. So let me show you the T cell maturation. So now this is your T cell maturation. So basically, the T cells, they are, there is a central lymphoid tissue that consists of bone marrow and thymus, and there is a peripheral lymphoid tissue that consists of lymph node. The bone marrow, the pro T cell, it will have CD34, and then it will go into the thymus, will have cortical thymocyte, common thymocyte, which is a double positive T cell, alpha beta double positive. This is an early on stage, and then it becomes specific for CD4 and CD8. After that, the CD4 goes into the naive T cells and CD4 T blast in the peripheral lymphoid tissue, and they form the regulatory T cells and the other T cell population. And the regulatory T cells, they kind of form the T follicular helper cells. So just a second. So then coming again to the cortical thymocyte. So the cortical thymocyte can also give rise to a gamma delta T cell. And this gamma delta T cell, it will be seen in skin, mucosa, spleen, peripheral blood. And that's why the mucosa, we call something like gamma delta T cell in the spleen, you know, like the hepatosplenic gamma delta T cell lymphoma. And in mucosa as well, there are like GIT and so forth. There are these gamma delta T cells. And then this CD8, they become naive T cells, T cell blast, and then they become effector T cells and memory T cells. And so basically, CD34 is present in the bone marrow stage, and the TDT is in the early on stages as well. CD10, as we saw in the B cell, CD10 is also the early on T cell marker. CD7 is present throughout the T cell maturation. CD10, it also acquires in case of T follicular helper cells. So once it goes in the early thymic T cell, common thymocyte and cortical thymocyte, it comes back in the T follicular helper cells. And other T follicular helper cell markers, I don't know if you can see over here, just enlarge your screens. It's BCL6, ICOS, PD1, CXCL13. These are all the T follicular helper markers. And they are helpful in angioimmunoblastic lymphoma. So if you know, the angioimmunoblastic lymphoma are the follicular helper cell origin. There are some PTCL that are also a follicular helper cell origin. But as you can see, they will have these markers, BCL6, ICOS, PDL1, and CD10, CXCL13. T regulatory cells. So T regulatory cells, they have FOXP3, CD25. And I asked this question if someone went through my previous session that was in the website as well. I'm asking you this question: what population, what tumor or what lymphoma does the T regulatory cell develop? Anyone? So you can see
repeat the question?
So T regulatory cells, what lymphoma does the T regulatory cells develop? So you see there is a CD25, that's your clue. What lymphoma has CD25? That is FOXP3 and C25. So your ATLL.
Histiocytic.
ATLL.
Yeah.
Angioimmunoblastic is more of T follicular lymphoma helper cell. ATLL, the adult T cell lymphoma leukemia, is more of T regulatory cell. So that if you remember, the ATLL has the CD25 if, in them. So then the double positive cells, so CD4, CD8 double positive cells, these are more of common thymocyte, and then it becomes specific for CD4 or CD8. CD1A, so 1A is important because when you have ETP ALL, all of these markers becomes helpful in ETP ALL, and when we'll go through ETP ALL, we'll read all of that. So let's go to the Brentwood. So they are showing the same thing. CD34, TDT, that is still the common thymocyte. CD7, that is in the total. CD2, CD5 comes a little bit late, like it's a dimmer in the early on. Cytoplasmic CD3 will be there, and it can also be there in the NK cells, as I was saying. CD4, CD8 will be initially double positive, and then it will start being specific. CD3, the surface CD3 comes later than the cytoplasmic CD3. That's something you can remember too. So they're showing precursor T lymphoblastic leukemia. So this is a normal thymic tissue, if you would see, and they have explained this in the Brentwood book as well. So the normal thymic tissue, you start seeing the CD3 expression, as I was saying, that the CD3, it comes on the later stages, right? So the CD3 expression, it kind of increases. However, the CD5, as you see over here, it is still present, and it is dim, but it becomes brighter. So basically, you see the CD5, which is dim, and it becomes brighter. So this is how a normal maturation pattern in a thymic tissue will look like. First, they are double positive. So this is your double positive CD4, CD8 T cells. And then it will become more specific for CD4 and CD8. Similarly, over here, the CD3 that they are showing the expression. So now, the precursor T cell lymphoma leukemia, they are showing over here that, so they are CD5, CD3, this big blob, which is having the surface CD3, that is TALL, and they are kind of losing CD4, CD8 over here. There is a minute expression of CD8, but however, it's losing CD4, and the same way it's a big blob that is sitting in the CD3 over here. Anyways, so that's your. Let's not go into. So this is, they are going into the ETP ALL, which we'll eventually go into after we are doing those cases and when we are doing those cases. So let's see the T cell gating now. So T cell gating. So as I said, the cytoplasmic surface CD3, these are your mature or the T cells that are present in peripheral blood or others. And the T cells, so they can be double negative over here, but they are more of red, that is CD4 positive, CD8 negative, and green, that is CD8 positive, CD4 negative. So as I was saying, the natural killer cells, the natural NK cells, they do not have surface CD3. They have cytoplasmic CD3. They do not have surface CD3. So the CD7 positive, negative for surface CD3, these are your natural killer cells. So it's pretty simple analysis, like B and, I don't know what happened here, like B and T, they're very simple. So again, the CD4, CD8, that is polyclonal, and your T cells with surface CD3 and so forth. They are also, so they are also showing that the red circle spots, they are your potential areas where your abnormal population will lie. And I'll not go into depth of this to confuse you even more. Let's go here. Actually, these all we'll do when we are, so they are giving the examples of Cidari, LGL, and the others. We'll go through all of these cases as we are going forward. So let's skip there, that. So now we read about myeloid B T general gating, and that was in our agenda for today. So this is all in the drive, guys. I have sent you the link. I have also placed the links in the group description. So you see, as I go with the cases, with the materials, we'll have the same things over here. So we went through myeloid, we went through T cell, we went through B cell general analysis, and Brentwood article. We went to the analysis normal. We have seen in let's see. We have seen, here. Let me see. We have seen as here. So we have seen as parts in the myeloid and other myelomonocytic and stuff like that. I can dive into it if you guys want, but it's almost what we have already read about B and T and the others. So it's, and then they are going to BALL here. Hematogones we are going to read when we are going to go into the Brentwood book. So tomorrow we are going to read the Brentwood book, and we are going to read, so this is a Brentwood book also in the drive, and we are going to read the introduction chapters. This will be more like our prior WHO book clubs where we used to read the whole thing, and I'll try to maybe highlight if I have time, but we are going to read the basics again. We went through some of these basics, but there are other points that are mentioned in this book that we should go through, and till if at all we'll try to finish this introduction chapters 1 to 5 tomorrow before we
At the same time of today, Akansha?
the same time as today, but tomorrow is weekday, which will be hard for me. What I will do,
3, I'm in Cairo now, so it will be 3, like today. We started 3 today.
yeah, I know. I mean, that's the only time that I can do, because early in the morning I have to leave my kid in his summer
Okay.
camp and everything, and
You
then
want to change the time tomorrow if it is not suitable? But just tell us.
yeah, I what I can do is today at the US session, what we'll be having, I'll record the session, and I'll play the session tomorrow, so that you guys can see it, and also when you have questions we can just pause and answer your questions. Okay.
I think it's better that you will be with us and have a
No, I will be
conversation.
with you. I will be with you. I'll be with you with the whole session. However, just that let's see how it goes. I mean, depends on.
Okay, we will
Yeah.
wait for your feedback until tomorrow.
Yeah. So, but to let you know, if you want to just start reading Brentwood by yourself, you can go ahead and read the first 5 chapters, the introduction 1 to 5. And once we are done with this introduction, we'll dive into the B-cell neoplasms, the cases. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
I had a question. Actually, I don't know if it's with me, but I find it a little bit difficult regarding placement of the quadrants when we calculate the percentage for the positive population. So can we have a session on that as well? Like when do we have to keep it at not, when above, when niche? So that is a little confusing for me.
Yeah. I don't have those placement plots right now with me. Rajeshwari, do you have it?
We can cover it anytime whenever it's comfortable for you, but
Yeah.
I had just had one suggestion that if we can include.
Yeah. Let me see if I have any data on that. I mean, I'm not sure if I do, but if I do have something, then we can cover that.
Okay,
Okay.
so that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right then.
Dr. Akansha, Can I ask one doubt? Like,
Yeah.
as you have said about the AITL, like angioimmunoblastic T cell lymphoma and basically follicular T cell lymphoma, they generally arise from follicular helper T cell, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they express the germinal marker as you have shown in that book of ACE My Path 1, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. So is there any difference between the specificity? Because as I've read in the book, the CD10 and CXCL13, CD10 and CXL13 are most specific, while PD1 and ICOS are more sensitive. Why it is like that?
I don't know. Someone else has that answer. Just tell her.
Is anything to do with that loss and all, with that maturation pattern?
I mean, I might have to think about it. I might come up with an answer. Just type the question to me in myself, like in my chat, and let me think about it. I can come up with something.
Okay.
Can you mention your question again? So what is your question actually?
See, like what I generally when I was reading, so basically most mature T non-Hodgkin's arises from the interfollicular T cell, right? But exception, we know that angioimmuno T cell lymphoma and follicular T cell lymphoma, which arise from the follicular helper T cell.
Right.
And they express, and they always express, as Akansha showed, like germinal center origin markers, in addition to the pan T cell marker, like CD10 and CX. So CD10 and CXCL13, what she showed, is most specific, while PD1 and ICOS are more sensitive. Why?
Oh, okay.
No, I have never get this answer.
Okay.
Like,
I just mention this question again to me, and I'll try to think on it. If someone has answer right now, they can answer it. But I'll try to think on it. The other guys also try to think on it. Maybe we can come up with an answer tomorrow. Let's try to read on it as well.
Yeah, I think I have to dig in the literature for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like I never understand, so
Can
I think you guys can do it. Yes.
Can I add something to this? With regards to follicular lymphoma, when you were saying the T helper cells are CD3 positive, but as far as I have read, they are basically the reactive T helper cells which are positive, and not the our target population.
No. I'm talking about the CXCL3 and CD10, not 3.
Okay, CD10. Okay.
Yeah, CD10 and CXL13, which is the latest marker, they are most specific and programmed death ligand 1, and ICOS are more sensitive. So what it has to do with the development or something, because this is a marker what we do. Why it is like that?
Yeah, I have to dig it. Sorry, I have to dig into this. I do not know this answer. Thank you for asking this question. I might have to learn this what happens here. Okay, so let's end this. Let me know your feedback, guys, in the group, and if you want something, if you like the session, if you don't like the session, whatever. I'll place this recording in the website soon. And if you go into the website, actually, if I'll show you the website quickly. That's our ACE My Path website. And if you go into website, I have already placed a flow cytometry course over here, and we are placing the sessions over here. So for example, we have the day 1 session and then the day 2 session. So I'll also place a day 2 session, international session over here, because this was a good session too. So if you want to go through what we read today and make sense of it, you can just go through those. Give me another 2-3 hours, because sometimes the recording takes time to process. So give me another 2-3 hours before I put them into. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, listen, I heard the strangest thing. I've been calling you. Just ask about it.
Okay. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
I got a call in Chambers to tip off from the CPS.
I think some
from MI5.
Okay. All right, I'm leaving then. Okay, bye-bye, guys. Bye. Thank you for joining.